Hey, welcome everyone to the Dusty Wheel. It's nice to have you back for our live adaptation of The Eye of the World. But before we get started, I wanted to just
Hey, welcome
recognize that a
everyone to the
couple
Dusty
days.
Wheel. It's nice to have you back
Sorry, we
for
have a little
our
reverb
live
there.
adaptation of.
I just want to take a moment and commemorate Robert Jordan's passing. It happened 12 years ago, just about 2 days ago. A lot of the fandom online were talking about it and sharing their memories. I recommend if you haven't taken a moment, go read some of those stories. It's really cool to see how Robert Jordan, positively affected so many lives. So it also happened to be the same day that principal photography began on the Wheel of Time television series in Prague. So we wish all of them the best of luck. And so that being said, let's get started with this live adaptation, or I guess part two. If you missed last week, we got everybody to the moment that they were about to leave Edmondsfield. So today we're going to try to cover, from here to Shadar Logoth, because as far as we understand, the television series, the second episode is actually called Shadows Waiting, which happens to tie directly to an episode, or sorry, a chapter in The Eye of the World. So we're going to try to do our best to cover these 10 chapters that happen between those and try to condense them down if we actually had to work with one episode. 1 hour, 10 chapters, and what that's going to look like. So let's get started. I want to introduce my distinguished panel. Let's bring them in. Hey, welcome, guys. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hey everyone.
Hey, so if you've watched the Dusty Wheel before, you know that we have lots of different panelists come in. Today, Tal and Mary are not with us. We miss you both. They'll be back next week, but we do have Todd back with us again. Todd, good to see you, man. Appreciate you being here.
Hey.
And we do have two new guests with us today. One is Ebony. Ebony, thank you so much for being with us. Ebony, if you don't know Ebony at all, she happens to be obviously a Wheel of Time fan, but she also moderates the Wheel of Time Facebook group. And not only that, she is the new member services director for JordanCon. And so we're so grateful to have her here. We met at JordanCon, and you're on lots of panels there, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you. So thank you very much for showing up. And Ted.
Sure.
Ted is a Theorylander from back in the day. Lots of people know him as the Winespring brother. And he happens to also do some beta reading for Brandon. But this is Wheel of Time specific, I guess. I don't anticipate us talking about the Cosmere at all, Ted. But Ted knows a lot about the Wheel of Time.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, yeah, exactly. He knows a lot about the Wheel of Time, too. So thank you, all three of you. And for anyone out there who happens to be watching on YouTube or desiring or listening to this and wants to call in, the call-in number is open. It should be on the screen right now. Give us a call. We'd love to hear your opinion as we get started. So, okay, that was a big intro. Let's just jump into it. Everyone, Ted and Ebony, you weren't here last week, but I think you were listening.
Mm-hmm.
You know that we're all in the stable yard at this point. They're on their way out of Edmondsfield, in essence. We still have Tom with us. Unfortunately, for some, during our adaptation, we lost Pat and Fane mostly from the story, not completely. And I'm going to go with just take a moment to maybe retcon that. Is there a majority of the panel that would like to see Pat and Fane back into the story at this time? Ted, how about you?
Yeah, I think I made that abundantly clear last week that the story will not go on without Don Fane.
And Ebony, how do you feel about Pat and Fane still being back in the story?
I like Fane in the story. I always have.
Okay, so I'm a third.
Got your wish.
I'm a third vote there, and I think Todd was even okay with the idea of Pat and Fane showing up later. So, unbeknownst to Mary and Tal, we've just brought Pat and Fane back in. Okay, that's what you get to do when you're the Dark One. You get to transmigrate people. So he's been transmigrated. He's back in. So awesome. Now let's jump back into chapter 10. The stable yard. This moment, this kind of really tense moment that they've all just kind of gotten together and they're taking off and getting out. They've just had this moment with the villagers, if you will. So they see the patrols going on. Do you like this scene? Do we need to see this kind of stable yard moment where Egwene shows up and then Tom shows up and we have them, kind of like mysteriously join the group, like we're leaving too? Do we need that is that like a key pivotal moment to anyone on the panel?
I think
Go ahead, Emily.
No, I was going to say, I think we need it. What I don't think we need is the conversation that the boys have when they're talking about their weapons and whether they left notes or not.
Okay.
I don't think we need that little bit right there, but I do think we need Tom showing up because we're going to keep Tom, and we need Egwene showing up.
Okay. So we need that kind of like they're Egwene's kind of taking off and not letting everybody know that she's leaving in essence, right? She's sneaking out
Right.
with them.
Yes.
I think that it's a helpful moment to have her to do that, right? Like we need this, they're all in essence sneaking out of the village. I like that as far as the leave taking is concerned, being part of that. I agree with that idea. The Tom piece to me, him showing up, it does feel a little bit, gimmicky. And then there's 4 people, then they all just happen to show up there. But I do agree that we need to keep Tom there with them. Do you disagree, Todd? Or are you cool with that? And we can just move forward on it.
I'm cool with that, and I was almost thinking that it could be something like Tom catches up with them later, or Tom leaves and they catch up to him.
Yeah,
I was kind of looking at it that way.
Oh, I like that a lot. I like that kind of twist of it. That would get rid of this idea of, it's just this. Again, I liked it when I read it the first time, and they're all kind of in this. They're in there, and they all show up like, "Hey, where did you come from? And you're going too." But I like the idea that maybe Tom kind of took off. They could do some fun things there where it's not just they all show up and they leave there. Okay, so then we do see this kind of portion of them going out, of the village, which I don't think we really need so much of you'll get it, right? It's gonna be really quick on screen. They're leaving and they're being really quiet, so no one sees them, and their patrols are going by and they're stopping until they kind of get away and onto the North Road and take off, and they see this Drakkar, right?
Right.
I want to dig in here a little bit. Do we need this monster, if you will? Do we need this one of the Dark One's minions here? Do we need this little flying kind of chase scene to get them out? Is that a necessary piece to, kick them off on their journey?
Well, at this point, the Drakkar drives their strategy because it's mentioned for like the next several chapters, all the way pretty much until they get past the river. So
Right.
they're trying to trick the Fades. I think the Drakkar plays in and adds the little horror aspect of what has been mostly a young adult story so far.
That's true. Okay. So it does.
I agree.
It adds a horror element. Okay, I'm going to give you that it does add a horror element. So my problem here is, do we have time for all of the stops, right? The Watch Hill moment and the Taren Ferry moment.
Stop at Watch Hill. I don't think we should stop at Watch Hill. I think we should just show them running, and you can hear the Drakkar, not necessarily have the scene where Rand sees it.
Okay.
Just have them running, keep where she makes the fog, and have them stop at Taren Ferry, because I think it's important to show her sink the barge. Okay,
so yeah, I would agree with that. Todd, on Watch Hill, are you game for that kind of piece? I was already there, Ebony. I'm okay with it.
I may be in the minority here, but I always hated the Drakkar. I didn't see the point, and to me it was kind of like a useless kind of plot push. It could have been done with Trollocs. It could have been done with just the Aes Sedai pushing them down the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just didn't really ever. It was nothing that ever really appealed to me, I guess.
It does have a little bit of Lord of the Rings, symbolism there too.
I think the Lord of the Rings is going to be a big inspiration for a lot of the story pacing and like photography, like the horse chase scenes. There's a lot of those in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that'll come down to how closely the actual producers of the show want to get to that, right? Is it a good thing or a bad thing from this adaptation standpoint? Do we, do people want to see that right at the beginning, and will that pull them into the story, or will it push them out? And I think we don't get to make that decision. We get to talk about it,
right.
but that is a question for for me here, which I like the idea of potentially dropping the Drakkar, or they need some element. I was even considering the idea of maybe bringing in the Trollocs back into this. Like they very much kind of disappear in this moment, and it might be interesting. You can have a horn sound. Yeah. You definitely could, right? Like they're on the run, and the Drakkar is kind of what's used to create that, the imminence of the, the danger here.
Right. So you just need something to make the situation tense.
Right.
So Watch Hill, absolutely, I believe that just needs to
go
the way.
I think that can go. Yeah, it can go.
So if there's anyone in the YouTube, feel free on the comments. Maybe you're just disagreeing with us right now, or you're all agreeing. I don't know just yet, and also remember, please do call in as we kind of cover these comments. Please, call in and let us know if you agree or disagree. We'd love to hear from you. So let's immediately. That means we're getting to Taren Ferry pretty quickly. I do like what Ebony said, which was we need a couple of. Well, I like some of these moments. I don't know that we need them in this exact way, but I love this moment with Moiraine. What happens with the ferry, right? I'd love also when she channels the fog, it does give you an idea of her power. Now, we might have already seen some of that with the healing. We might have already seen some of that with, depending on how they approach the attack on Two Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
So we might already know that about her. It might not need to be established, but it is kind of a cool effect, right? It's not this control over the elements, does, add a little bit of a layer to her. So I do like that aspect. What was it about her sinking the ferry? What is it when Ebony, you said, I really want to see that. Why do you think they need to keep that?
Just because I think it helps you wonder whether she's good or not.
Okay.
You're already questioning her motives. I mean, when she sinks the ferry, is that necessarily because she doesn't want to be followed? She left the ferryman stranded.
Yeah, I think the question of the motive thing is a good point. Austin in the comments, he pointed this out. I just saw it, and we're already out of Edmund's Field, but I think this is a good segue back to this question, which is, how much do we want to know about Moiraine as the viewer here? Because there is this belief, right, as they've talked about the show, that, and we're going to be bringing this up each time we do this, right, that Moraine's might be a bigger, we might get more point of view from her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you brought up this point about sinking the ferry, which was we wonder at her motives, but if we've already gotten a lot of her point of view, we're already going to know, we're going to know a lot more about her motives, right?
That's true.
So in the end of the day, maybe, I think that's from an adaptation standpoint, that's certainly something they must have been discussing, which was if we take a view from Moiraine in the village, then her motives are going to be more clear. Not necessarily completely clear, but more clear. And then if we have this piece about the ferry, but I still think it's a nice moment, which is just because her motives might be more clear, like she wants to get these boys out of here and she's there to help them. That doesn't mean that she sinks the ferry doesn't kind of make you question what kind of means she's willing to use, to get her way.
It also kind of throws it in everybody's face that there's no going back.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's really
and there's
good.
There's a parallel from everyone who's likely seen the Lord of the Rings movies. There's the scene where not the Fades, the Nazgul, is that what they're called?
The Fades.
When they're chasing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can't even think of their names.
You're bringing up
chasing Frodo, and they run up to the dock, and they jump on the boat and sail away. And because they're afraid of water, they get away. So this is a little parallel to that, where it's not just getting on water. It's Moiraine can cause some damage if they do happen to get across the water.
Yeah. So this is a good. This is an important part of the adaptation. It's not that important in the sense of if we drop Taren Ferry. Have we lost much by dropping Taren Ferry? In other words, do we need them to stop before they...
I don't think they need to stop. I don't think we need interaction with Hightower and all that. I think we can just show them going across on the ferry.
Yeah.
Getting off.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That gets us there really quick. I like that a lot. So
the only flavor it adds is that it shows how quote unquote distrustful outside people are. Like, ooh, the Taren Ferry people, they're all dark friends because they're from away. That gives the flavor of the fact that they're traveling away from home.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. There is some value I see there, but I think they can also handle that in Baerlon. But you're right. There is some.
That's true.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. why don't we then ask this? So, what if we go beyond the Taren Ferry, which is important here? So we're beyond that, but there is in the books it says it takes them close to a week to get to Baerlon. And there are some things that happen on that journey that I think that are important for us to talk about. And I'm not sure from an adaptation standpoint we need them, but I think we should cover them. You know, they're seeing, you know, in their travels, right? We see Moiraine begin to train Egwene, right? That part is a really important piece to me.
I agree.
We have to see that, I think.
But I think we should see it from Moraine's point of view.
Yes,
not from Rand
absolutely.
watching it from the outside. We should see that from Moraine's point of view.
If we're going to have a Moraine-centric story, you know, we have to see a lot of that, because in the whole first book, she only had one point of view scene, and that was in the epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a great way to see the world from her eyes.
And the other thing is that Rand is sick, because, I mean, he's channeled, you know, and that's his first. It's right along in there somewhere that he
When he's on the
sick.
boat. Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, I think that kind of, I mean, I don't know how you work that in there and how you explain it, but it has to be in there somewhere.
Yeah, and this is where the question is Tom back in the story? You know, there's, you know, Lan is training the boys, you know, in you know, weapons. Do we need? I don't know. Some of that's kind of like almost. It becomes a kind of a cliche, right? This trope of like
We can always do it as a montage.
Yeah.
Have the interaction. We can have a travel montage. Stop and have Moiraine training Egwene a little bit. Do the travel montage.
Yeah.
And there's the part where Rand is eavesdropping on Moiraine and Egwene. They can just all combine that into one scene.
Yeah, I do like that. I like seeing all the scenes with Moiraine and Egwene actually being. I like that the training aspect. I think that's an important piece. But I like the montage capability. You know, from all the things that Lan's doing. Right, he's going out and he's scouting and he's coming back and they're traveling over and past some villages and, you know, all these kind of things. You know, Egwene unbraids her hair, right? And then we have this scene about Moiraine confronting the boys about wanting to go back. And Todd, you brought this up, which I liked a lot. I like that idea that the ferry being, destroyed kind of shuts that off for them. But I do like the idea that we still sense that desire of returning. Like they lose this, the imminence of the danger, and all of a sudden they want what they want back. So I like the idea of mixing. So when it comes to this journey to Baerlon, do you think we need kind of all of those pieces? Are all of them integral to the story at this point?
I think that they could be like Ebony said, shown in a montage. I don't think that it's something that necessarily has to be gone really in depth with. I think it's more important to get them to Baerlon.
Yeah, and that's an interesting piece, the Baerlon piece, and I really want to dig in. That's where I think we're going to start to get some bigger disagreements. I wasn't quite worried that we were going to be able to cut some things out, right? The journeying is kind of, we want to get somewhere, and getting them there quickly, I think that can be done, because I think Baerlon does hold some importance here. There's a lot of key things that happen. One of the first things is a lot of maybe some exposition of, they get to Baerlon, and immediately, right, the gatekeeper tells them that the Children of the Light are in town, right? And it talks about the dragon's fang, and he talks about the dragon reborn and Gildan and all this stuff, right? He starts bringing up these topics that then push the story along. So even that gatekeeper moment to me is an interesting one to keep, which is they get to Baerlon and finally, and all of a sudden, trouble, right? Things are happening, the prophecies. It even mentions a sword that cannot be touched, right? So many things come out here that begin to paint a larger story, which I like a lot. Would you guys keep this would you just get them right to the Stag and Lion, or would you have them interact at the gate here with, I think Avon is his name?
I like the interaction because that's the first time that you hear Moiraine give an alias.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could do that at the inn, but I do like that you're saying that everyone in the town knew and that they'd come through before, right? There's this awareness that they've come through. Yeah, that's That's a good point. Keeping that, dumping, almost dropping everything else up to this point, but coming in here, there's going to be some pieces here. And I like that. That's a good idea, Ebony. I like that.
Well, that and the boys this is a huge city to the boys.
Right.
They're country kids. They've never seen anything like this in their life. And so it's kind of a big deal to them,
So yeah, I think in their reaction would be, even if it's just you're paying their faces to show their reaction to the big city.
And Tom's reaction to them as the
yes.
hayseeds.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. You definitely need that piece of it. And by the way, to those that are watching and trying to call in, we had a little problem with the call-in line, and I'm going to try to get that reconnected. But I want to keep this moving. To that point that I made about them coming into this town, right? I believe they came in at night, if I remember correctly, right? They're not really seeing anything here, and they get to the Stag and Lion, and Master Fitch welcomes. I think you could even skip the Gatekeeper. You could and have all that kind of exposition. Now we get into a lot with the men are in the bathtubs, and they're kind of relaxing.
I don't think we need
that. Can be skipped. We have enough bathtub scenes in Crossroads.
Wow, you're just dumping the first bathtub scene. I don't know. I have a hard time believing we're not going to get some bathtub
If you
scenes.
cut one scene in this book, that's the scene to cut.
Really? Wow, that's the scene? I don't know. That one, I
disagree.
Yeah, right? I'm with Todd on this. Give us some bathtubs. Yeah, go ahead, Todd. What do you mean?
I'm talking later on in the books. There's a whole bunch that I could see getting rid of.
Yeah.
But not that I want to see the bathtub scene, because I'm fine with them going away. But there's a lot later on that I'm more interested in ditching.
Okay, but I want to make an appeal for the bathtub scene.
Okay.
That's what I'm about to do. What I mean by that is they've just gone through this journey, right? They, this is that scene where Lan kind of stands by the door. He's really suspect of people. He's trying to tell them not to be, country bumpkins. Be careful about who you talk to. They're all kind of relaxing. Matt has to be talked down after not just giving away, not talking about Trollocs in the city. There's I don't know, that this kind of scene it humanizes them a bit, right? They've been going out. And we all have that moment of coming back in and finally relaxing a little bit. I like it for that. I like the relaxation aspect of it, and it does lead.
Say cut it.
You still say cut it? Is that a?
I still say cut it.
I feel like everyone wants to cut the bathtub scene. Maybe we'll retcon that one next time. Mary and Tal might have a different opinion about that. Okay.
It can go.
But it leads to this piece, and I think this is one of the biggest questions that I want the panel to address, and I'm going to let you speak while I try to reconnect the call-in line here, which is Min. Do we need Min in Baerlon? And Todd, what's your opinion about that?
I went back and forth about Min, and I feel like I finally made the decision that we really need her now. I think she brings a lot to the story that's going to happen later on that we kind of need to see right now.
Okay, I'm good with that. So I'm there, but Ebony, do you agree that Min needs to be in?
I agree, and I also agree because as we get farther in the story, she is the closest thing that Rand kind of has to home. Because we need to meet her where he's still kind of close to home.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Does no one disagree that Min can go here? Ted, are you a Min fan?
Oh, Min has to stay. I mean, one thing we see, especially from the first book, is that every time there's an inn, whether in Emmons Field or someone else, there's someone important introduced to the story. You got the Queen's Blessing, you got the Stag and Lion, you got Wine Spring Inn, and it sets up the pattern of pay attention to these people in the inns.
Okay, but she doesn't do much right in this moment, at the very least. Do we need her here? Do we need her?
I think she does. I mean, she certainly gives Rand a heart attack with all the visions about his future.
Well, no, she doesn't do that until a little bit later, right? This is they're coming out of the bathtub and she sees them. But yes, I agree. That could be an interesting place to.
Well, we cut the bathtub scene. They're not going to see her.
Right. Okay.
You can retcon that later, but
we got rid of the bathtub scene. Oh, we're getting a little reverb there. So, okay. So then let's jump past this question about Min, bringing her back in a little bit later here, because we have this concept of, they have dinner, and then I'm assuming everyone's okay with them eating on screen and chatting. Is that okay? I don't know if we have to cover that one too much. But Rand going up to his room and having this dream. Now, I know Todd, last time we talked about it, Todd was not a fan of this dream, or dreams in general. But this one, Ishamael's there. He speaks about the Eye of the World. He speaks about the White Tower plans, prior false dragons, threatens his life.
My concern with that is it's too much. It's too much information that he's given, and I feel like it's something that's not going to be well received. Like, if we could get like a Cliff Notes version of the dream, then maybe. But it's like him ranting the whole time.
See, I think, and I Rand can come downstairs and go, God, I slept like shit. I had horrible dreams all night, and that's good enough for me,
Yeah, see, I still think this is because they talk about this dream later on, after when he wakes up, he comes down. This is integral to, Matt and what Matt's thinking,
Well,
and Perrin.
Maybe if we take out all the extra stuff where he's talking about all the stuff he did, like keep where he crooks his finger in the rat breaks.
Yeah, right. I mean, this rat portion, right? Like this ability, somehow he has the ability to kill these rats die, right? This is a dream, and somehow it has become kind of real. And so I think that there's this. I know the sense of not including the dream was kind of a theme, but I feel like we have to include some of them. Obviously the dream world is going to be a big portion of this.
I agree that we need to include some of them. I just think that this particular dream is just it seems like a really long dream. It seems like Ishamael's given a lot of information. It really seems like he's lost it a little bit and he's just ranting about stuff. Rand doesn't understand it. The audience isn't going to understand it. And I feel like we could cut part of it out.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe it's a quicker thing. I'm in for keeping it. Ted, what is your feeling here?
I love the dream. It gives a totally different focus from just the traveling and running away, and gives a sense that I don't care how far you run, you're not running away. We're with you all the time. I'm like your shadow.
See, I love that. Right. So I think, okay. So yeah, I'm back in here. I don't think we, as far as, by the way, the call-in line should be back up if you want to give us a call. I'm with you on that, Ted. Absolutely. The kind of idea, the feeling like you can escape, I think needs to be done here. I think it's a really opportune time to do it. And the idea that all three of the boys have the dream is important kind of connection there. So I think that this might be we'll have to set up a poll. So in the YouTube comments, we can somehow enable it so you guys can break a tie. But this is going to be an undetermined question, whether or not we keep the dream or don't. Two of us want to, two of us don't. Or
I'm willing to take a Cliff Notes dream. If we can have a Cliff Notes version of the dream, I'll take it.
Okay, what I'm going to say here is, though, you're leaning into the dream. Dream wins. Okay, dream stays. the dream stayed. You can't lean in and get away on the adaptation. The dream's staying. Okay, cool.
There's parts of the dream, besides Balsamon, like him going to the White Tower and everyone worshiping him. Maybe they could trim that part out a bit.
Yeah, again, this goes back to Ebony's point, which is, what they included there, but I still think it's such a key kind of idea about the power that at this point Balsamon has, right? The Dark One has, and that he's after these kids, I think is important, and that it shows up in the physical world in a weird way, right? With these rats and they can't escape him. I like that a lot. So I don't want to belabor that point anymore, but the dream's back in, which I like. Okay, so now we get to this part where Rand awakes. He goes and eats in the kitchen, and he notices the rats, of course, and he meets up with Perrin, and Perrin does what, Todd, you mentioned. He's like, I just had a bad dream, I don't want to go out right now. And that's when we get the Rand meeting Min moment, which you were talking about, Ted.
Right.
I agree. But to me, this is almost a little bit too much. This comes down to how much do we, I don't know, from a reader's perspective, she certainly kind of turned into this, she knows all, right? She sees anybody and it's like, well, I know you're going to be in this relationship. I know you're going to do this. I know I see all these things over your head and all this glory. How much do we need Min telling us all these things are going to happen to these people? Or do we just need her kind of to go like, yeah, I see things in essence, how much exposition do we need there all about her talents and her abilities? Do we need that in this moment if we keep Min?
I don't think they need to explain it all at once. Just give an idea of what she can do, but it doesn't have to be an info dump. Just enough to show that she can do something, and that enough that Rand and them believe in it.
Do you want this to be something that they visualize? Like you almost see it in like a music video where they superimpose things over people's head. Do you?
No.
I don't know how that would look.
That was a no on Todd. No, you don't. You just wanted her to talk about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want it to see it from her point of view, is what you're saying.
No,
okay.
we've got to save budget dollars.
We have to
all these extra effects.
We have to see the one power being used. I mean, in the end of the day, we're gonna have to see something, but you don't want to see.
I'm saying save it for that. We don't need to see Min's visions. I'll believe her if she says it.
Right,
Okay.
and Min's she's a mystery to even to the Aes Sedai, what she does and how she does it. So I don't think it's something that needs to be seen. I think it's better to kind of keep it hers.
Okay.
And not to mention, I mean, for some godforsaken reason, some people thought Min was a dark friend. So not showing her visions gives that little seed of doubt that maybe she's just making it all up.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that we could see Min later at the White Tower. We could meet her there. We don't have to have her here in this moment. I agree that her meeting Rand here is quite interesting. It's part of the story, but we don't really. It's not like she becomes this integral part of the first book here. But I think she does some interesting things, which she adds some element of, this talents, and this is kind of funky and this is weird. She kind of freaks Rand out a bit. She actually says the three women standing over a funeral bier, this kind of,
The problem with that, Matt, is that the boys do not go to the White Tower, so they would not meet her.
Yes. No, you're right. They wouldn't. In other words, I'm suggesting that a couple things would have to happen here. They would have to change the entire plot of that first book a bit, which is not impossible. I don't think I think everyone needs to get used to the fact that this is an adaptation and it's for television, and it's not the idea that every single plot thread is going to be included.
Right.
It's just not realistic. I know people are going to get online and they're like, oh, but all of these other adaptations where they didn't follow it, it ruined it. I get it. The idea that it's not realistic that they're going to follow each plot thread. Now, I'm hoping they do follow the Eye of the World pretty closely. I'm not saying I don't think they will, but this piece of Min showing up, I just don't think that she's that important in this moment. Don't get me wrong, she's one of my. I love the character of Min. I just don't think in this portion we have to have her. It sounds like the three of you do, so I'm not going to fight too hard there. Maybe Mary and Tao will let me retcon that next time. But
She's not Tom Bombadil. You got to keep her.
Exactly. So this is another big piece, which is Rand and Mat in the city with the Whitecloaks. Do we need the Whitecloaks and Lorne Bornhold? Right? Do we need this moment? I know there's some people on Twitter right now, especially ones that have character accounts that happen to be for these characters, say yes, we do. But do we need them?
So
I think.
Go ahead, Ted.
I think that they definitely add a lot, because here we meet Dane, and later on, when Perrin and Egwene are captured by his father, it just adds to the menace of it, like, oh wow, you guys are the dark ones we ran into. You're really in trouble now.
Yeah. So this is there are some other pieces here that come up later where this could be interesting, right? They could weave this piece in. It does give Baerlon a little bit more meaning than just kind of a stop in for a bite to eat. Right? This is one of the major conflicts that happens here, which is do we need the Whitecloaks this early though, and do we need this moment? And surely if they stop in Baerlon, I am leaning towards this conflict of Whitecloaks that was going to transcend the books a bit. If we're keeping them, I like it. I like it. It also gives that moment for them to show Rand have this euphoria, one power moment, where he's starting to feel its influence, and he kind of, he gets all saucy with the Whitecloaks, which I really like.
And one more thing. Sorry, Ebony, I keep cutting you off.
No,
But
you're
just
fine.
one
Go
more
ahead.
thing. It shows how Matt is kind of a loose cannon, because he basically picks a fight with trained soldiers, and we know how much that pays off later in the book.
Yeah, I like
Sorry,
that part.
go ahead, Ebony.
I was just gonna say, I say to keep them because at the end they stop them. They try to stop them from leaving.
Yes.
True.
So,
Right.
so that is another chance to see Moiraine use her power. But I think it's a good interaction at the end, also, at the end of that chapter.
Yeah. What do you think, Todd, on this?
I like the Whitecloaks. I think they add something to the story, and I think that I like the interaction, and I like that later on Perrin has another interaction, and I think it kind of adds something to the story to go, yeah, these guys are not right.
Okay.
They're way
Yeah.
over the top, religious zealot type people.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Before we go any further here, we have a caller, Chris from South Carolina. Let's bring him into the call. Hey, Chris, can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. Hey, Chris, thank you very
Hey,
much
guys.
for being on the show. Hey, appreciate it.
Hey, Chris.
So what's your thought here? I know we've covered a lot of territory so far. What have we said that you either agree with or disagree with, or do you have a question for us?
Well, I tell you, Matt, I got off work about 10 minutes ago. I'm driving home listening to you guys, and I can't even drive all the way home because, oh my gosh, you can't cut out dreams and you can't cut out men, and what is wrong with you? And I love you all, but you can't do that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, get home safely, man. I appreciate it. That is true. I agree. No dreams cutting, but see, I agree with you on the dreams. I feel like we can cut men until a little bit later. So, but I hear you. There's a lot of fan favorites here. Our first show that we did, there was a lot of angst that Pat and Fane got cut in the show. This is fan speculation, everyone. This isn't the actual show, but we like to think it could be.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say,
I
Todd?
hate that
Well, let me
everybody.
say No, go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say, I hate that everybody is. I hate that everybody is so wrong about the dreams. That really bothers me.
Yeah. No, I'd be surprised if everyone supports that. I'm gonna go look and see how people are talking about this. Like, do we need the dreams? Because I was surprised when you guys cut it off. Wanted to cut it last time. Well, Chris, any other comments on the Whitecloaks before we send you on your way?
Well, I didn't get to hear what you said about the Whitecloaks, so I'll leave that out. Let me just say this, that I think the things like the dreams and men's visions are sort of our equivalent of Game of Thrones, prophecies and House of the Undying and stuff that people discussed and talked about and dissected for years. So I don't think we should underestimate the intelligence of people that will watch the show, and give them some stuff to chew on and wonder and try to figure out what it means. It's okay if they don't know what everything means right in front.
Hey, that's a good point, and I want to cover that here for sure. Which is, I do agree that coming from someone who's loved to theorize for the last many years about these things, that giving some of that meat to the viewer is important, and certainly I don't think we can cut it all out. That's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that in, Chris. Hey, thank you very much for calling in, dude. Travel home safely.
Keep it up, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. For anyone else, feel free to call in if you disagree with us, so far with how we've adapted the second chunk of time. Feel free to call in. We'd like to hear your thoughts on the Whitecloaks and see if anyone supports getting rid of them. I guess for Baerlon to make sense, I want to keep them. I'm in agreement there. Which, if we're going to stop in Baerlon, I like that there's some conflict that isn't directly just tied to the Dark One here. So if we're going to get the Baerlon feel, the country bumpkin moment, you got to be careful, and then the Whitecloaks. I do like that. I do like, Ebony, what you brought up about Matt. Getting himself into trouble in the way that he does, and then it does give us a way to kind of leave, Baerlon in a divisive way, which I really like a lot. So sounds like we're for keeping Baerlon. That Baerlon made the cut. I wasn't too surprised. I'm at the same time, I wasn't surprised that we cut some of the earlier places, but Baerlon does have some significance here. Is there anything else that you would bring into the story at this point in time that's happening in the world? If, for example, they bring up, Logain, in essence, they bring up the false dragon, they bring up the conflict there, they bring up Kalendor, they bring up a lot of these pieces. Are there things here from an adaptation standpoint you would add them in at this point, where people are talking about it at the inn and they're hearing about these things? Does anyone want to see more of the world in this moment?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if they alluded more to the hunt for the horn that's been called, which they're going to hear about later on.
Yeah. But by the way, there's a question and so if you have any answers there's a question on YouTube that says, anybody think that the non-book reading people will think the Whitecloaks are more inspired by racist, fascist organizations or religious zealots at first glance? Do you think that's going to hit people like this is not like in the books? This is meant to be kind of a modern day, kind of right up, punch to the nose, like this is happening to us today. Do you think that that's going to be a non-book reader kind of feel like this was, kind of a political almost edition?
It shows the repetitive nature of the Wheel of Time. This book was written in the last turning of the wheel where this was a thing, and now it's a thing again.
Okay. Ebony, you were going to say something too.
I was going to say it's inevitable that some of the non-book readers are going to take it that way, even though that's not necessarily how it was written. But in this day and age, yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think there's any avoiding it. Todd, you have the same agreement here? This is going to be a common kind of theme for non-book readers?
I think people are going to see what they want to see with that, and it's something that's just going to have to deal with. That they're not going to understand how long ago this was written, and they're going to attribute it to right now,
to right today, right? Which, yeah, and actually, I think it'll be a good in the end it'll be a good piece of conflict to discuss. I like it. I like leaving it in there, and yeah, like you said, Todd, everyone's going to see what they want to see in each one of these pieces. So, okay, so the other big piece that happens here is the introduction of Nynaeve into the story. Do you like Nynaeve's arrival into the story at this point? Is it necessary to this first season and our adaptation here? Do you think? What would you do here in this moment, Todd, with Nynaeve? Would you have her show up just like she does?
Yes, because I think it attaches her and Lan together. Because she sneaks up on him, and Lan doesn't like that at all.
Right.
So I think I like the way it worked.
Yeah, it does say a lot about her, when especially when Rand finds out what was going on back at home. It does say a lot about how she made it there, right? She kind of escaped a bit too, right? She took off too. So, is there anyone on the panel that thinks that Nynaeve in this moment, like, we don't have her come in right now? Is there any reason to
actually,
not? Oh, and actually, go for it, Ted.
I would have liked to or just joined from Emond's Field, to be honest, because she's one of the 3 POV characters in the book. I wouldn't mind seeing more of her instead of just having these more kind of slapstick showing up out of nowhere like we already saw when they tried to leave Emond's Field.
Well, since we cut out the bath scenes, instead of having those bath scenes, maybe they could flip back to Nynaeve's point of view and show her leaving.
Okay, so that brings up...
You mean like having her chase them?
Right. You could just show her leaving the village, and then still have her show up the same way she shows up.
Yeah, I like this a lot.
That would be nice.
Yeah, because there's something else that's happening here, right? Other things are happening back at Emond's Field, right? She talks about them, with Tam, and I would almost like to still have a connection in this television series back to Emond's Field, right? We kind of lose it a bit.
And I would rather them show it than her talk about it with Rand, because when she talks about it with Rand, then that's when we found out he was born outside of the two rivers, and I don't think I want them to know that yet.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I know that makes. I like that a lot. Potentially doing some not flashbacks per se, but giving us some different point of views. I think they can do that with television really nicely. And I would like to see kind of that connection with Emond's Field. As far as the adaptation is concerned, adding some things in there that we don't see in the book. So, what an interesting idea. Min. This idea of Rand has this moment where he has an interaction with with Nynaeve. We just talked about that, all about kind of the things that were happening back home. But then we have this common room. They're out there and they end up dancing, right? This whole huge dance happens. Do we need this dance scene? Is there something about it that, just beyond the perspective of humanizing them, do you like this moment of kind of merry making, if you will, before they flee again?
Other than that, it shows Nynaeve is a real person and not a wisdom. Other than that, I really don't see the point.
Anyone else in favor then of kind of getting right? I kind of thought people would want to keep this scene. How are you feeling about this one, Ebony? Because Rand kind of dances with a variety. I think Moiraine's in there. He kind of humanizes Moiraine a little bit. Do you think that's an important piece in this moment?
I don't know how I feel about this scene. Part of me wants to keep it in there, but part of me also wants to keep every scene. So
Sure.
that's irrelevant. I think the only thing it does add to it is humanizing them. So what the heck? Keep the scene.
Ted,
There is one thing about the scene where it's like there's maybe 3 scenes in the whole book that shows the boyfriend-girlfriend relationship of Rand and Egwene.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And there's also the spy that Rand notices there, right? Setting
Samael.
up something. Well, yeah, no, the Whitecloak spy that's there during the dance is also, he keeps on mentioning that he sees some guy kind of watching them all night. And so there's a portion here where I guess it does, it does bring in it does set up, I guess, a really nice way for the next scene to happen. So I think I don't think it's important per se, but I do like this idea that they're getting to know the characters, and it does give them a chance to interact in a way that they haven't interacted yet at this point. So let's stop right there. I think we do have a caller, and let's bring her in. It's Beth from Indiana. Welcome, Beth, to the Dusty Wheel. Appreciate you calling in. Hey, Beth, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Okay, great. Hey, thank you very much for calling in. What have we been talking about tonight that made you call in? What question or comment do you have?
Well, my comment was about Nynaeve, and
Okay.
earlier when we were talking about Taren Ferry,
Yeah.
I think showing the destruction of Taren Ferry is extremely important because it shows part of Nynaeve's absolute drivenness to go and stalk and hunt and find those boys. Otherwise, later in the show, if you don't show how driven she is, she just kind of might come across as a bitch.
No, so yeah, you bring up a great point here, which is the Taren Ferry connection to Nynaeve isn't one that I had really spent a lot of time thinking about, but I do like that, which is it shows not only do we get the nice segue of Moiraine, what is she willing to do to keep the boys, peace, but we also get the dedication that Nynaeve has, which is to get these boys back from this woman, who's taken them, and her love of of these boys and of Egwene, right? It brings that to bear, and it does give us a nice little segue of, and she was able to still find them even though Lan was doing his best to hide them. So, I love that idea. That's a great point. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that kind of came up that we were talking about that where you disagreed with the panel or you kind of agreed with us?
I don't really disagree, but one thing I had thought, you had mentioned showing flashbacks to Emmons Field.
Yeah.
Instead of having Nynaeve describe that to him, show it real quick. Show her disgust and just throwing her hands up and don't tell anybody and just go.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I absolutely hope we get more of those kinds of scenes. They weren't on in the, we didn't have them in the books, but I really hope that we get more of a connection back and forth between that village. I absolutely agree with that a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, thank you
absolutely.
I really appreciate you having I call it courage, and I don't know how many talk shows I've called into. Thank you so much. I love when I find out that they're just fans all over the world that love these books and love to talk about them and are really interested in the adaptation that they're doing and really excited about it, and that you would call in and share your opinion. I really appreciate that, and we hope that you'll call us back again as we're doing this.
Hope so. Yeah,
hey,
you're welcome.
Hey, thank you, Beth. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So yeah, I love both of those points. We actually have someone else waiting for us. I think Nick has actually called us before, and let's welcome Nick back into the show here. 1 second. Hey, Nick, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Again, how are all of you?
Hi.
Hey.
So what were you thinking about this second part of the adaptation we're doing? What struck you as, from, things we've either agreed with or disagreed with? Where are you at? What comment do you have, or what question do you have for us?
First off, I think Min absolutely needs to be there from the beginning, and I don't want her at the White Tower for the simple reason that new viewers might think that she's an Aes Sedai if that's where we first meet her.
Interesting.
Okay. So
okay.
I want her where she was in the book.
Yeah, okay.
I like the Naeem surprising Lan that gets their relationship going because he looks at her with respect for the first time.
About that specific.
Other thing is
about that Nynaeve. Do you like the idea of her surprising Lan, but that we see her on her way, or is it important to you that we don't know she's coming?
I think it's important. I think it's important to us that we don't know she's coming. If they do not choose to have her ride with the group, which I could see her, I could see them doing it. In that case, she still surprises Lan. When Lan goes out, she goes out with him, behind him, and sneaks up on him anyway. So that scene still works either way.
Okay.
But if they do not show her coming, then the first inkling that we need to go is Lan turning around and her being there.
Okay.
And you guys talked about earlier that you think the bath scene is going to be cut out. I don't, only because I think that they're aiming for the Game of Thrones audience, and I think that because I think that because the violence is going to ramp up in later episodes / later seasons, they have to establish the M rating pretty much right away. And what better way to do that than some nudity in a bathtub? I don't think it'll be like. I don't think it'll be gratuitous, but I think it's going to happen.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with you. I'd be surprised if they dropped it, but again, who knows? They might just really want to focus the show in different ways than we're talking about, right? Doing scene by scene adaptations, it happens, but they a lot of times they drop these things. But I do agree with you there. We certainly will get bathtub scenes at some point in the series, and this seems like a good enough one. Why not include it? Hey,
yeah, and it's
go ahead.
It seems like it'll be something that happens in the first episode. I think with the way that if the episode titles are not like false flags, if they're correct for pacing, this could very well be something that happens in the first episode to set the tone of the show right away.
That'd be interesting.
Although they could easily do that with the Trollocs.
Yeah, getting all the way to Baerlon in that moment in the first episode, that would be a fast pace. It's not that it's impossible. That would just be incredibly fast. Yeah, that would be. But hey, Nick, I always appreciate you calling in and sharing your opinions. You've called in, I think, even from like the first or second show. I can't remember what it was. I think it was the first show. And I really appreciate you calling, as you always do. And I hope that you keep watching, and we'll hear from you next week.
Yep.
Hey, man. Hey, we'll
Thank
talk
you
to you
for having me again.
Absolutely. Anytime. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hey, I don't have my book in front of me, but when Nynaeve comes up, am I remembering right that Moiraine feels her there?
That's after they've gotten separated. That's
Okay.
after Shadar Logoth and they're going across the river. Because she
Okay.
said, if you watch the wolf too hard, the mouse will bite you on the heel, or something to that
okay.
effect.
I was trying to remember, and I don't have my book to look real quick, so I couldn't remember exactly.
But they certainly could give us an inkling, right? I could see them bringing that up to the forefront of Moraine's interest in Nynaeve. I could absolutely see that. In other words, not waiting until that they start to try to give hints to the viewers. I absolutely believe that could come up earlier. Now, we just got through, by the way, again, thank you to those who made comments and called us. We really appreciate that. Now, we just got through the dance that apparently it seems like there's kind of like we'll keep it, not necessarily have to get rid of it, but we could lose it piece. But Rand gets alone with a fade in a hallway. Do we find this a very compelling moment that needs to happen?
Mm-hmm.
I think
because
so.
fades are terrifying.
Okay.
Yes, especially since, I mean, unless they show the fight scene when everyone attacks Emmons Field, the only time we see a fade, he's just stalking Rand and not really doing anything scary even.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think from the perspective of that's how they're found. You know, they need to be found in some way. Whether or not it's the fade, they need some impetus to get them out of there quick because there's danger. So, and it seems like it's a nice introduction. You know, depending on what introduction we get at the beginning in the first episode, that seems like a very good possibility of how that can happen. Now, this brings up when that happens, right? They rush out and they confront the Whitecloaks. It seems like if we're keeping the Whitecloaks, there's no reason not to show the Whitecloaks here kind of confronting them at the gates as they're leaving. Is there any strong impetus here or any strong desire for us to cut that out of the adaptation at this point, or leave that scene in?
I would keep it totally.
You would keep it totally? Okay. Anybody else disagree or keep it in?
Keep it.
I think it plays. It plays well with everything else we've done. Some of these decisions were really easy for us to make because we've already kind of made them with prior decisions. Now, 2 questions did come up in the YouTube comments. Let's quickly address them. One is the question was, do we know if these episodes will be an hour long? So the answer to that is we do not know for sure if they're going to be an hour long. I believe that is the assumption at this point. So I don't think it's. I would imagine. I don't know how Amazon does all their series, but. Maybe they all track this way to kind of a specific time, unlike HBO where they, whatever, it's 45 minutes, 62 minutes, whatever it is. But the assumption is these are hour-long episodes, and that's what we're kind of assuming here with our kind of live adaptation that we're going to base this on. We have an hour. And I think we got here to Baerlon pretty quickly. We're able to kind of settle in and spend some time, and now we're leaving. There is a question, I think it's been addressed, but let's bring it up to you guys. Instead of Nynaeve just showing up, should they instead show a montage of her tracking them? So that came up earlier, I think, Ebony, you mentioned that. And there is that mix. Beth brought this up, which is there's something about Nynaeve showing up and it surprises Lan and no one knows, right? We're all surprised. The viewers are surprised, the boys are surprised, and Lan is surprised. Versus she just kind of shows up, or we see her on her way, and we assume that she's going to arrive soon. I do like the idea that we don't know. So I'm kind of mixed on this question of knowing about Nynaeve beforehand and seeing scenes from back then, or just kind of, Nynaeve showing up. So I'd love to go back and read the comments in the YouTube chat and find out what you guys actually thought about this. Do we know about Nynaeve beforehand, or should it be a surprise? Now, we're trying to track these adaptation things that we do here to about an hour 15 minutes. We're kind of coming up on it, but I don't think there's much to discuss here, but some important pieces, which is they leave Baerlon and then the chase begins, right? The chase of the Trollocs. I think this is, if you think of Shadows Waiting as the name of this, this episode, and the question is are we going to get there at the end of the episode? How much time are they going to spend with the Trollocs here, chasing them down, Matt and the Old Tongue, all these kind of, pieces that continue to build on the story. I'm going to have a hard time believing anyone on the panel is going to suggest that we get rid of this, but I don't want to assume that. Is there any reason that we would want to drop this chase scene out of our adaptation?
I say keep it.
Yep.
Gotta stay.
Yeah. See, I think this is one of those I think most fans would agree upon, which is, look, this is the whole moment, right? This moment pushing them into Eredal, or Shadar Logoth, this idea of, showing up in this place and splitting out, because they're chased, and everyone gets broken up into groups. I have a hard time believing they're going to skip this whole section. And this is an important piece. Seeing Moiraine, protect them from all of these Trollocs and Myrddraal coming in, I think that's going to be awesome. I think that's one of the scenes I look forward to seeing, how well they do, right? That's going to be like the money shots, right? These, as in, can they do this from a CGI perspective? Like, how much is it going to be effects? How much, how much are we going to see of these battles between the Trollocs and Moiraine using the one power against them? I'm excited about it. I didn't think anyone would disagree that we need to see this piece. Now, Chapter 19 is Shadows Waiting. I feel like this Shadar Logoth is a fun place to end this episode. How much of Shadar Logoth do we need to... Mostly what I want to ask is, how much do we need more death, or is Mashadar enough? That's really my question here with Shadar Logoth. Is Mashadar enough, or do we need more death?
I think Mashadar was more of a passive threat. You'd be like, oh, look, it's down the street. Let's just walk around it. But Mordeth was way more menacing, I think. I would love to keep Mordeth.
Yeah, is there anyone that at this point has an argument against keeping Mordeth in the story?
I mean, Matt's got to get the dagger from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Matt could take the dagger by himself, right? They could go treasure hunting, and they could, in the end, I guess what I'm saying is they could do some of these pieces. He gets the dagger, he takes this, and it doesn't require this Mordeth character. And so that's why I love Mordeth. Don't get me wrong. I have a hard time even suggesting this piece to like, this is killing me to even say it.
Mordeth is the first OMG moment in the books, especially if you just visualize this normal person expanding to the size of the treasure room, and the lights are out and the boys are, absolutely panicking.
Hey, hold on one second, Ted. I didn't notice that Shantane was on the call in. She's been holding for 6 minutes. She's awesome for doing that. I apologize. I got talking. So let's bring her into the call. See if we have her here. 1 second. There we go. Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel, Shantane. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
So sorry, you were on wait. You were waiting for a long time. I apologize. We got stuck talking about the beginning of Shadar Logoth here. So, what were your comments? What were your thoughts so far of the adaptation we've done tonight? Where have you agreed? Where have you disagreed? What do you have to say?
Well, as much as I dislike Min as a character, I think we do need her. I think it's important that we have those sort of prophetic elements so that we can pay them off later. And she is important in several other moments later in the series. Like I said, I don't particularly like the character. I think she's kind of not that interesting. But when I first read the books a billion years ago, I did like Min, and I thought she was going to be a lot more than she was. But it turned out that Egwene, the character I expected nothing from, was the character that I really responded to. As far as the other moments, I think we need to have the meeting between Rand and the Myrddraal. I think that that's one of those iconic moments that we can't lose.
Yeah.
And I did like the dancing scene. I would like to keep that. And as far as Mordeth and Mashadar in Shadar Logoth, I think we need to keep Mordeth, but I think he needs to be creepier. Like maybe even a hallucination that only Matt can see.
Interesting.
You know, because Matt seems to be more susceptible to Mordeth's influence. So I think that would be kind of a cool, creepy twist. Like,
Yeah.
is he real? Is Matt just hallucinating? You know, I think that would be kind of a cool twist.
Which, by the way, you called Min a prosthetic element, which I love. Oh my gosh, I was like, oh, that's
Prophetic.
Prophetic. I think it was prosthetic. I thought you meant like she just kind of they got it. I thought you meant she just kind of got added in there.
No, she foreshadows a bunch of things. Yeah, she foreshadows things. She's prophetic, not prosthetic. But, yeah.
Well, she does tell Rand
how...
about him losing a hand, and he gets a prosthetic hand.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, that's right. Now both of those things make sense to me, and I'm going to live on both of those for a couple of days. That's hilarious. No, but I love this idea that you just brought into the adaptation here, and I'm totally into this idea that Mordeth is creepier, and even like you said,
yeah,
because he is, you know, he has that illusion-like quality, and this idea that only Matt could see him or something, like, oh, that's really that'd be better, because he kind of limps away in the story. You know, he blows up a little bit and he kind of freaks out. He's kind of crazy, but he's not necessarily that scary. And I like the idea of amping up that.
Well, and he's not a living person.
Correct.
You know, so if he's some sort of manifestation of Shadar Logoth, then he should be that. He shouldn't be just this random guy who's like, hey, you want this dagger? I mean, that's kind of silly.
Yeah. I like, absolutely. Yeah, I do like them modifying that, because they can do a lot with that, because in the end, it's just him, if, you know, assuming we're keeping Padan Fain here, it's just him becoming part of Padan Fain itself. And so the idea that they do something a little bit more interesting with turning him, you know, creepier, and maybe even, like you said, something like Matt could say. I love that idea. That's a great idea, and I'm into adding it. That's part of my headcanon at this moment. That's added to my adaptation that I'm holding in my head. So, hey, by the way, we missed you last week, but we're on at least from a call-in standpoint. But we're glad to have you back this week.
Very sorry about that.
No
I'm
worries.
very sorry to join so late on this one.
No
I'm
worries.
glad I made it though.
Yeah, I'm glad you got in. I think you're probably our last caller here. So, hey, we appreciate you calling in as always. And we hope to talk to you again soon. Hey, thanks for being on hold for so long.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, man, I love when fans call in. It's so fun to talk to people about this, especially just, you know, everyone has opinions about the stuff, so I love that piece. So I kind of want to wrap us up here. We're kind of in the midst of Shadar Logoth. It sounds like most of the emphasis is to keep Mordeth, which I agree. I would want to be devil's advocate there, which is to say that I could see Shadar Logoth has a history, and I could see it being a creepy history, and I could see Mashadar being, you know, even amping Mashadar up a little bit, you know, giving it more sentience than it has potentially. I could see them getting rid of Mordeth, but Matt still having the dagger. In other words, I could see some of these elements coming out and not introducing this other character, but I don't think it would take much to bring Mordeth in, so I think we'd definitely keep him in there. So,
Matt, do you want this to be the end of episode 1 or the beginning or 2, or however they work it, and then the beginning of the next episode? How do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like the idea of going a little bit further than we are right here, which is to say, I like the idea that Lan coming back after the boys have their adventure and talking about the Trollocs coming into the city, and Mashadar splits them up, and all of a sudden they're being chased. I love that as an ending scene for the episode.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that? Do you want to see it end there? If we were to end anywhere with Shadar Logoth, do you want to see it before that happens? Or would you like to kind of get to the end here where they're all kind of, you know, being broken apart?
I like that. Mm-hmm. I like the end of them all being broken apart, because they stay split up for a long time after that. So I think that would be, you know, the start of the split. I like that idea.
And I think that one thing you can do visually on TV as opposed to in the book is now that Matt has the dagger, you can kind of show him have like this shadowy influence over him every time you see him on screen.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I love that idea. That's where I wanted to get us. We did it in an hour and 15 minutes or so. Well done. But yeah, this idea that we can kind of paint this picture, I think they can dig in a little bit to Baerlon. We can skip some of those early elements and still get to Shadar Logoth and get through maybe that introduction to Mordeth, by the end of episode 2. I love that piece. Hey, by the way, to the three of you, I really appreciate your opinions and for you jumping on and doing this, right? This is like, for me, this is a lot of fun, and I hope all of you have enjoyed your time here. And hopefully those who have watched it, who are going to listen to it later, hopefully you enjoyed that. You keep on making comments and keep on being part of this adaptation. Next week will be part 3 of this, and the following week will be another Amazon Prime announcement. We'll take a break from our adaptation, and we'll focus on whatever announcement we get there. But yeah, please come back with us next week, same time, maybe different panelists. We'll see how that turns out. But as always, please, if you're here, obviously subscribe, follow us on our social media channels, and share your comments. We try to do a good job of kind of tracking them throughout the week and responding to you because we love hearing your comments, and we'll try to include them in future shows, of course. So to everyone, good night, and hopefully be thinking about how we're going to adapt the next 10 or so chapters and come back on Wednesday. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.